You will not believe this conversation that's on here. Good evening. I don't have a. And welcome to the Town of Southern Pines agenda meeting. I really hope many of you attended the Veterans Day Parade that was Saturday. It was very impressive, and it was great to see so many families and so many children. It was just a spectacular event. I'm still in awe of paratroopers. As my father used to say, why would you jump out of a perfectly good airplane? He was in the Air Force. That might be the reason he said that. Now turning the meeting over to our town manager, Reagan Parsons.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no additional commentary this evening. We'll simply address the matters as we work our way down through the agenda, but I have
Okay.
nothing additional to add. Other than to say I had sent each of you an email earlier today from Mr. Silverman regarding the Parkway and Target project. If you've not had an opportunity to take a look at that yet, I would direct you to your emails. It's relative to the eventual naming of the Parkway. So, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you much. Our first to review is ordinance 2040-080322. This is text amendments, UDO. Is that BJ? Or somebody gonna say anything?
Do you want a presentation?
No, just if anybody has any questions.
Oh.
And they can address them to you, or,
I'm prepared to make a full presentation at the regular meeting
Yeah.
Next week because it's a public hearing. If you have any questions about it prior to that, based on what was in the packet and the staff report, I'm certainly
yeah, I'm
happy
assuming
to answer them here this evening.
everyone can read and got all that? Okay.
Of course, I have a question. Wouldn't be the night without me having a question.
You can make it a special night.
We could. It could be a special night. Buy me a muzzle. So BJ, do you have a recommendation as a planning expert as to how to address, I mean, I know that the UDO has stipulations about things that are okay to put on top of a building, but do you have a recommendation before somebody builds Cinderella's castle with turrets and everything else as to how to oversee that not going out of control, since our only height restriction at the moment is the 38 feet, and that's interior? Do you understand? Is that clear enough?
First of all, easy with that expert stuff.
Yeah, well, okay, sorry.
Watch that, yeah.
I'm gonna
And,
backpedal.
But after that, the issue of chimneys, church
Right.
spires,
Right.
additional things that go on top of a building that typically are not counted with the building height, that is currently addressed in the UDO.
Right, so
That is not part, that is not part of this text amendment, so I haven't looked at that to be prepared to answer this question.
okay,
Just being honest, I could sit here and kind of wing it and come up with something, but we do have a section that deals with exemptions to building height, what qualifies as an exemption to building height, the
Right.
rationale behind why certain things, maybe, for example, a turret or a church spire or whatever might be in there. If you give me a couple minutes, I can certainly pull up that section. And we can-
I've actually read that section, I know, but there are exceptions, and how do we get to those, and how do we keep, and there also are then exceptions to the rule, i.e. post office and, God, there were like 6 of them, but post office is the only one that comes to mind, right? Schools, et cetera, that are exempt from that limitation.
Yeah, so here we have up on the screen here in front of you,
Boom.
section H, the following buildings may be constructed to a height of 50 feet, provide a sprinkler system, fire resistant stairway enclosure be provided. So we go into a variety of buildings. Then under letter I is media, chimneys, church spires, water tanks, elevator shafts, scenery lofts, and similar structural appendages not intended as places of occupancy are exempt from the height limitations set forth in the section, provided that not more than 1/3 of the roof area is covered by such structures. Now that, because I'm familiar with a section of building code that deals with the issues of story of a building not counting as less than 50% of, if you have like 2 and 49%, 2 stories plus, 4/10 or something, whatever. I would have to imagine that is somewhat, takes a little bit of, and I'm responding to this on the fly, I haven't studied this ahead of time. I'm guessing that some of that comes from that, but the specificity there about churches, chimneys, church spires, water tanks, the fact that it says in similar structural appendages, not intended as place of occupancy, means people could come in with other stuff, and we would have to take a look at it and make an interpretation, which would, of course, be appealable.
Are you at peace with that broad language as the UDO currently? I mean, that puts a lot of responsibility on you all when,
Yeah. I would respond to that by saying that that has never come up in my time here and in previous jurisdictions and previous lives. When it has come up, it hasn't been used as a workaround to achieve something that was deemed undesirable by the community.
Okay.
That's my experience with it in a couple decades of doing this, so.
Okay, thanks.
I don't see a fire burning there as soon as I say that. Later this week.
Somebody just threw the kindling on, right, right.
It's a great idea. It's a bunch of chickens. Oh, the top of the building. I think it's a structural appendage, so I'm pretty sure it's exactly.
It's only 33% of
Yeah.
that. All right,
So,
okay.
But no, this is not I don't have a problem in search of an answer to this issue right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? The next one is PD 1122, the Norwood Track Phase 2.
For that one, Carol, I talked to Mac. I need to be recused from that one.
I was waiting for that one, okay, because it is quasi, so we really can't discuss this a whole lot because
But I
it's,
think if I understood Mac correctly, y'all have to formally vote for me to be removed from it.
do we remove him? Remove him?
Happen this evening or at the
Remove him
open of the
now or do we
hearing next
remove
week?
him later?
You would recuse him now, so that the minutes reflect that he hasn't participated at all in this item.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to,
Do we need a reason stated for the recusal?
He has a conflict. That's how.
Right,
that's all
okay.
we need.
To recuse Bill Pate from the conversation since he has a conflict of interest. Do I need to state the
PD 1122.
PD 11-22?
Second. Or
Aye.
third.
Pleasure, council. Okay,
Aye.
okay, you're good. Everybody's got that, okay.
Is there a possibility we can ask the applicant, because McDeed's Creek came up specifically on this application, is there a way for us to estimate in these living situations what increase there would be of student-aged children? And if they actually, the nearby school has that capacity? I feel like that is a infrastructure issue, just like water would be. Is there a way that we can, is there some sort of, I guess, measure of an estimate? And then I just wanted to reiterate the road suitability and the lighting and noise mitigation, I'm hoping they'll bring next week.
Yeah. Since it's quasi, we really can't say a whole lot.
The staff ask for those things, if you have not already.
So there are state statutes that deal specifically with the issue of impact to schools with development approvals and restricting the ability of local government to contemplate impact to schools when considering impacts of development. I have not reread it moments ago, but while you were talking, I started pulling up statute about this subject because it's easy to find. It's
You're
front and
busy,
center.
you're busy back
Yeah,
there.
that's all right. It's front and center in a number of places. I can say that a fact such as asking the applicant if they have an estimate of the number of school-age children that may reside in a project like theirs, I'm not aware of anything that would preclude that question from being asked. Basing a decision on the impact of those school-age children to a facility nearby would get into much murkier water that I would prefer to be fully versed and reversed and have Mac at my side before that went that direction. But does that make sense about the distinction?
Had that information, so go ahead, Mac.
That can't be a basis for the decision unless it's one of the criteria listed in the permit requirements.
If we had that information and we knew they were coming in, is there some way that we notify the school board that they're going to get an influx of 200 students at a certain time? Is there some communication between our two bodies?
Yeah, if something is approved, first of all, after it's approved, we can definitely send out a notice if the town council, for example, during the process of review said, hey, by the way, staff, would you please send a notification that this has been,
Okay.
this is, yes, we can do that. The other thing is we send out agency referrals prior to meetings, and school districts typically get a copy of the agency referral. I can't confirm right now if they did get one for this, because we have not actually been, because of the statutes that talk about impact to schools not being able to, we have not lately always sent those to the school districts, because sometimes we get somebody at the school who doesn't know that, and they actually will give us a principal might give us a comment that's like, hey, this is really going to be an issue. Suddenly we have that
We
on
can't do
record
anything about it.
and we're off to the races with a little bit of a challenge there.
Okay.
So good
BJ
questions, and we can be prepared next week with the section of statute that's relevant to that.
Okay, thank you.
BJ, two quick follow-up questions to your responses. One, in this instance, is this one that the school would not have been provided notice directly due to the immediacy, the immediate adjacency of the tract in question to where the McDeeds Creek School is at?
Yeah, there's a good chance that the adjacent property requirement would have triggered that. I can pull that up right now.
I thought the school.
Second question while you're pulling that up. Are you aware of a standard, how do I want to term this? Is there an accepted standard as to how many students on average are created based upon the 1, 2, and 3 bedroom composition of a multifamily development? Similar to with a TIA, this use will generate X number of trips per day. Is there some, in the planning world, technical standard that would give credence to an estimate of the number of students that would come from a project that you're aware of?
There may be, but I don't know off the top of my head right now.
Okay.
So that's a great.
I hadn't seen one. I didn't know if you had maybe somewhere along the way.
Well, good questions, and guess we will know more next week.
Okay, thank you.
The next one is Order 2022-3, zoning exemptions for ZE 0222 Public Art that is on 1012 North May Street. I don't think it's pretty much there.
My only comment there is, it looks like we're going to have a fairly significant quasi-judicial hearing as 4B.
You want to move it up?
So I wondered if we might move that up out of courtesy to Chris Dunn to not be there until 1 o'clock in the morning.
We don't want to be there 1 o'clock in the morning either. Is that a problem with anybody to move this? Okay.
Thank you.
And while we're moving,
Just a quick.
sprucing up Southern Pines, can we move those folks?
I was going to say on that particular item, we'll probably move that right to the opening of the.
That's usually
Yeah, that's
the
what we
first thing.
generally do with that.
Yeah,
so.
okay, so we'll just move that to the front too.
That's a quick question on the mural thing.
Uh-huh.
I think this one just sort of happened, and now we're trying to make it compliant, but the purpose was to not have them done, and then I know this one's a little unique, but this isn't the way that these are normally going to move forward.
It's going to be like the one that
Okay.
Nick's doing.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, this was like a holy smack.
It's also likely to be the last one you see as a zoning exemption pursuant to 2.11.
'Cause we're-
But we've encountered some challenges we want to look at closer regarding that section of the UDO. This one was one where we received a complaint about 2 murals, one of which was clearly, both of which met our fairly broad definition of signage, one of which was clearly a sign on the side of a building, the other of which qualified for the Arts Council of Moore County's public art program. And so they spoke to the Arts Council. The Arts Council chose to sponsor this one and is bringing it through for an exemption to the UDO and the definition of a sign, because both technically meet the definition of sign. The other did not qualify for their program as public art because it did not meet their standards for public art.
Good?
Yeah, so we agree we're going to move
Those 2 things up.
both of those up, right? Good.
All right, so now we're, the proposed action items. This is LKC Building at 390 West Pennsylvania Avenue, and I see some LKC, you can always tell an engineer, they're just absurd. We had a Rotary program, and I have to tell you, he did a program, and he goes, I'm a recovering engineer. I thought about you, sorry. He had to have a bubble chart, just. So, well,
We do have a staff presentation.
okay, yeah, that's what I was waiting for, and it was kept, oh,
Welcome.
yeah. Welcome. Thank you. Nice to see you.
Yes, it's a first presentation to the board, so
Yeah.
thank you guys for having me.
We will not be cruel.
No, but feel free to be honest, no. So, yes, what you see here in front of you, and what you had in your packets prior to this meeting, includes my staff report for this project, as well as the attachments that were provided by the applicant who's here tonight. So, let's get going. This image, you can see we've got the different uses going on around the building, which is where that little yellow waypoint is. So we're in the central business district and surrounded by central business. It's also in the downtown overlay zone. And you can see its proximity there to the core business district as well as the historic district. So a pretty prime location, I would say, considering its proximity to downtown. All right, see if I can, there we go. So I'm going to be quick about it. This is kind of where we're going with this presentation. Talk a little bit about zoning, the existing building, and adjacent parcels to the building. The proposed building, its elevations and some of in the layout of the lot, my evaluation of the compliance that the application had to our UDO, some noteworthy elements that you should take into consideration before making a decision, and also staff recommendation. So the project is owned by BAT Properties, and the applicant and authorized agent for this is Mr. Dean King on behalf of Pinnacle Development Design Build LLC. So as I mentioned, this is in the central business zone and also the downtown transition overlay zone. So here's our existing building. It was a Spectrum in the prior life, and you can see we've got some parking there, the setback from the street, existing vegetation on the site. We've got this is thanks to BJ for taking some aerial images of the site. This is what the roof line looks like. You can see it's a one-story building. Starting to see a little bit the adjacent properties there. This is the rear side of the building, additional parking that's there. And this is the right side of the building, which is right off South Leek Street. You can see there's brick on the building, which is consistent with our design standards. And this is kind of a view looking at the property and its adjacent properties. You can see those roof lines kind of looking for some consistency and some, some variation between buildings. And this is looking in the opposite direction. If you can see maybe like 1, 2, 4 properties up on the left, that's where the Spectrum building is. So you were looking away from downtown towards the property. Some new buildings that have been gone in there, kind of similar to that design style that you're going to see here in a moment. And this is just from the opposite side of the street, looking in the same direction. All right, so this is our proposed building. This is the front elevation, and you can see a lot of improvements here. We've got an additional second story being added, which is adding more than 10,000 square feet to the building itself. Significant improvements to the front entrance. And
So they're going to change what's there, not take it down and start again.
that's right, they're going to use the bones.
Gotcha. Okay, just
There
verify.
is also an extension that's going to be happening. They're going to be, my understanding is moving it closer to West Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So it's not only adding the second floor, but it's also expanding the space itself.
Gotcha.
But they do want to keep the same design motif of the Spectrum building, which is why it's kind of got that same, horizontal kind of pattern. Right. So this is kind of tried adding the streets there for reference. So the front elevation, the entrance, if you will, is on the left-hand side of the screen, facing towards West Pennsylvania Ave. The top image shows the left side of the building as you're looking at the building. And the bottom one shows the right side of the building, which is the side that faces South Leek Street. So you can see the top image, which is it's actually facing the parking lot, so that would most likely be entrances for most people. There's an entrance going to be located there. And on the South Leek Street side of the building, the right side of the building, will be an awning and patio area. Again, significant improvement to what's there right now. Let's see here. Oh, I'm going a little too fast. And these are the renderings that the applicant provided to us. So you can see we do have that glassy, glazed glass and the significant improvements. We still have that brick veneer on the outside. Really, the parapets hide the mechanical equipment that's going to be behind, stored on the top of the building. And you can also see there that patio there and some improvements on that side of the building. And then on the parking side of the building, you can see there'll be another improvements made to that entrance as well. And here's just kind of close-up of the designs for the two different sizes of windows that they had in mind, the left showing the larger windows and the right showing the smaller ones, but very similar in aesthetic. And there's the awnings and the patio.
Are they going to be fabric or metal?
They're going to canvas, my understanding, black canvas.
Because that's, you just look across the way, it just tears.
Yeah.
I have an office with torn, that's the reason I say that.
And so now that you have kind of a vision of what, you can see the vision that the applicant has, this is more or less the layout based on what we were able to see before. So there's the parking in the back, parking in the side, some ADA compliant parking as well, and the expansion of the building there, its footprint, and you can see its, location in relation to the streets. So this is our evaluation based on those the design requirements, the 10 that are in the UDO. There was only 3 that they were not compliant on and they're requesting a deviation for. The rest, they were generally compliant. So the 3 that they were not were the building orientation and the entry, specifically the entries, not the orientation. On the southern entry, which is the parking lot side of the building, we require there to be at least no more than 100 feet between entries. And that side of the building, it'll be 138 feet from the main side of the building, the front elevation of the building. So that is greater than that. But they are using an existing door that was in Spectrum Building, so it's a reasonable request. For the building dimensions, one of our requirements is that the building be taller than it is wide. And one way for them to address that is to add segments, design elements that make the building look broken up. And you can see, if I go back real quick, that they have, those vertical buttresses, which are kind of really segmenting the building, and they've added that to their original design. So they really are assisting us in the town and helping make this building become more compliant with our own design standards. And then the other thing that they're requesting a deviation on is the windows. They don't meet the minimum window coverage, wall coverage requirement, off by about 20% on the ground floor and off by 10% on the second floor. But as you can see also in the renderings, they are using the existing spaces where the existing Spectrum windows were to kind of maintain that same motif. Go ahead.
Back to the previous picture, keep there. Why is the window formed there out of brick to the right of the entryway?
I will have to defer to the applicant for that. I don't want to speak for them.
Just checking.
So that's where the elevator is,
Okay.
and we just kind of added that to make it kind of like what I did on our building up here in Pennsylvania, to make it kind of look like an older infill window. The building has its challenges because we're building on top of the existing building, so it's kind of, I don't want to say restrained us design-wise, but it has kind of led us in a certain direction. So that is where the elevator is. It makes the most sense programmatically for the building, but we may end up throwing like a different texture brick or maybe a different, like a pattern like we did at my building. But it's really just to kind of give a detail. It'll be recessed and cast shadows, so it's just going to kind of give a little bit of interest to that otherwise kind of blank space there where the elevator is.
Thank you.
Okay. Again, like I said, they were compliant on and everything else. I should note that the signage, they plan to submit us 2 on-premise signs at a later date, so that's not being reviewed with this application. Some noteworthy project elements. This is infill redevelopment, as Mr. King just mentioned. This is going on an existing building, so the building will include office space, so multi-use areas, purpose areas, break rooms, kitchens, meaning your typical kind of office space, patio area. The applicant is, as I mentioned, proposing the expansion of the building and the addition of the second floor. So this is a total addition of 13,738 square feet. I believe the new total is 23,738 square feet for the building itself. And as Mr. King said, the significant improvements are being made and proposed to the existing building, and that is bringing it closer to compliance with our design standards in the UDO. So based on that, everything I've mentioned to you up to this point, the planning staff recommended deviation for those 3 elements that they are not compliant with, and also approving AR 2122. So any questions for me?
Thank you very much. Good job. First time.
Would you like to add, Elena's been here for 2.5 weeks.
Exactly. Very cool.
She walked in with some credentials, you know, just a few. You want to come up to bat?
I'll do a little lead in and I'll turn it over to Dean, but we're pretty excited about being here, obviously. I know that. Hopefully what Dean and I bring a little added character to that part of town and refresh the building that needs a little TLC. From a site perspective, it generally meets our needs, plus or minus 80 parking spaces, some of which we may lose in terms of getting the parking lot up to compliant, or us trying to make it more compliant relative to some of the landscaping standards that the town has. But we're very excited. We're going to have, the building is designed for 67, about plus or minus 70 people. Bring them all into downtown. We can walk down and grab a bite to eat and interact downtown. So we're very excited. And our folks are.
Yeah, if you'll state your name, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Tim Carpenter, one of the owners of LKC Engineering. So, looking forward to it.
You want to state your name too?
Yeah, I'm Dean King with Pinnacle Development. This is Adam Johnson. Sorry. With Pinnacle.
That is quite an improvement. I guess I didn't realize how unattractive the building was because it was just there. You know, you just sort of don't see it because it's just there. And all of a sudden you think, wow, yeah.
Yeah, we're bringing it closer to the street and obviously adding another floor, which, as I said, has its challenges. But, I think that building was built in the 70s, early 70s maybe. So we've had to verify the footers are big enough, strong enough. We've had to go in and we're going to have to put a retrofit of steel structure to hold the second floor. So it's, that's actually kind of driven some of the design, but, I think it's definitely an improvement. I think it'll fit right in with.
How many anticipated employees do you have with LKC?
We have about 54 right now. This would allow us to get to somewhere around 70, I think.
Okay.
How we use the space.
And how many people drop by an engineering office, or do you all usually go to wherever people are?
Yeah, you're talking about as far as our clients or extra traffic.
Right.
Very seldom on the, more local clients, right? So if we're doing a project here in town or in the community, we'll have some of those clients will come by for meetings, but probably 75% of our business goes outside of Moore County. So we're typically going to them. So right now at our office, if we have one visitor a day on average, that would be a lot.
Okay, thank you.
And did you say parking would be an issue, or do you think that you can handle the parking requirements for your employees on that lot?
I think we're fine with our parking requirements. So relative to the UDO requirements in the lot that we have over at the corporate park, that building was about 19 or 20,000 square feet, and I think it required plus or minus 80-something. So, I mean, I think we're over relative to the square footage requirement and the parking ratios for the use. I'm pretty sure we're over with the existing parking. I think there's currently 80, I think I counted these right, Taylor, but I think there's 82 parking spaces out there now. And if you see from the direct aerial from above, you'll see when Duke or whomever built that building originally, they had actually, the back parking lot's pretty big, so we meet the dimensional standards. Even putting a kind of a doggone planning island in there, you can sort of see how it's striped out. So, and they used to park service, and some of you've been around here for a while, they had service trucks and things back there, so they're a little bit larger parking spaces anyway. So, but yes, to answer your question, we can meet our parking requirements.
So you're compliant with UDO, you think, according to, as it relates to parking, are you also compliant with what you're going to need as far as your own employees and people dropping into the business, or?
Yeah. I mean, so if we're max 70 people, I mean, I think the way it's programmed, max 70 people in the building working there, right? But what happens is we're 54 people right now, and about 15 of those leave off, surveyors, construction managers, et cetera. So by the time we hit 70 in that office, so if you got 70 parking spaces and you're plus or minus 10 left over, that would still be a lot of visitors. And, quite frankly, there is some on-street parking. We're not using that to meet a UDO requirement, but there is parking on the street.
And it's probably a rare day when you have everybody under the roof at the same time.
Very rare.
Nature of your business, I would think. Okay. Any other questions for them while they're here?
Looks great.
Looks really
job.
good.
Looking forward to it.
Good job. And what do you, I know what you guys do. What do you do, Adam?
So I'm retired military,
Uh-huh.
20 years, and then I started doing architectural design. I work with Dean at Pinnacle, doing some conceptual stuff, and the 3D renderings I'm doing more
Oh,
these
okay.
days too, so,
Looks really good.
yeah, thanks.
I mean, Adam's kind of designed the whole thing pretty much. I mean, I'll be the architect of record, but, he's kind of worked with them more closely, and I've kind of taken over now, so it's, yeah.
I appreciate the 3D renderings. I don't have an eye to see these elevations and appreciate it, so thank you for
Yeah,
doing that.
they're getting better, they're pretty cool looking.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
And we may not be exactly in that brick color, because I was sitting here looking at it, change the shade a little bit, but.
Yeah, the renderings help, but sometimes, that's not a real brick in real life.
Right.
We can, but we'll try to match we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
That's the idea.
I don't know if Tim will be present for another application or not, but is there a necessity for them to be back next Tuesday night
I don't.
relative to this application?
There's a necessity for them to be back if it's the first time the public is hearing it. I just think it's important if there are questions and concerns with the public.
Well,
So,
I will offer ARs are not public
they're not
hearings.
public hearings. I mean, I don't.
open meetings are public, whatever.
Yeah.
I think it's important to have people there.
What do you want to do? I'm talking to you.
Oh, I don't see a need for them to come back.
Next Tuesday?
What do you think, Taylor?
I'm only 2 blocks away.
Yeah.
If I'm here, I should be.
Effort, thanks.
Well, we haven't decided because he doesn't think they need to come back. Taylor?
I'm okay. I mean, if you guys want to be there, that's great. I'm okay if you're not there. I will make a quick comment that I feel like where the elevator shaft is, whether it's variation of brick or darkened brick or something, I feel like it looks a little bit lopsided.
Yeah.
That's just my very unprofessional opinion.
At one point, we wanted to bring the elevator out and make it like but we're so close to the front setback.
Okay.
And programmatically, we needed the space inside, because that's all new, that's all additional.
Right.
But yeah, we
Right.
can work through that.
Bill, do you want him to come back or do you care?
I'm okay either way. But, if you're gonna be there, that's great. But,
I'm likely gonna be there Tuesday anyway.
Okay,
So.
okay. Well, I guess we'll see you Tuesday.
Thank you all.
Good job, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next proposed action item will be the Morganton Park North Apartments, AR 2222. This is requesting approval for an architectural compliance permit. Hello, Pam.
Good evening to everyone. BJ's pulled up this presentation and just want to mention that The applicant, Mr. Daniel Jellicourse, is here this evening, and his designer, Darcy Chamberlain, as well. And they have, I think, a few slides that they want to share with you
Okay.
when I'm done. Let's see. Morden Park North Apartments. And here's my How We Got Here slide that you've become accustomed to seeing. And some of this is fairly recent, but obviously this is part of the overall master plan that was approved in 2013 for Morganton Park. The zoning established through the MRD process. The CDP for this area was approved in 2018, and it did allow for a wide range of uses, including an elementary school. It was amended to include that use. And then the PDP was approved in September of this year, and specifically allowed for 300 multifamily dwelling units and more or less 20,000 square feet of mixed-use retail, restaurant, and our office buildings. This AR is strictly for the multifamily. I suspect we'll see the non-residential portion come at a later time. I haven't been told when to expect that. So I just want to mention, as I'm, I guess, in my 7th or 8th month here and watching how these ARs move through the council, I've tried to understand some of the basis for decisions, but more particularly, the amount of deviations that were granted were a little bit of a surprise to me. With this application, and particularly for the multifamily, and some of the same deviation requests were coming in with each one. So with this review, I delved a little bit deeper into what the staff report says, which it does include these 4 guiding factors for a decision on these, and there's broad discretion to be flexible with the standards, and that's stated in the UDO. I also noticed that these 4 criteria that you see here, we really didn't delve into those in any detail whatsoever, but I thought that they were important. And I'm not going to delve into them in detail here, but I did in the staff report. Looking at, I think anytime, and I found it unusual that comprehensive plan reference was used for an AR, but it was, so I took a look at it, and there were a number of goals and policies that I thought were relevant, and that's a judgment call. Others may say no, they aren't, but I did list those out in the staff report. And then there's also this substantial conformity with the design standards. That's part of the criteria, and of course, we do tend to go through that in somewhat detail as far as what is compliant and what is not. And the staff report does list all of those and whether they're compliant or not, and I really just wanted to pare down this presentation to what's not compliant. And so that's what I'll go through now. So I guess my point there was that I found some of the reasoning behind the granting of the deviation requests, and it made a lot more sense to me then. So this, you've seen this site plan before. This was part of the PDP application. Nothing has changed here. Just wanted to include it just as a reminder. And I do have all of the building elevations, but they're at the end of this presentation. If you want to see them all, be happy to pull them up. I just wanted to sort of be more concise with this. There are some minor variations between the 4 types of buildings that they're proposing for the residential buildings. And this is just, this building type number 1 is just an example of how they look. Like I said, there is some variation between them, and I'll be happy to show if anybody wants to see each of those. This is the rear and the other side of this building type 1. And with that being said, I will go through what is considered to be deviation from the standards. with this application. This one, I don't know how much this has been discussed, but I find it a little bit curious that it calls for variations to create visual diversity between structures. Usually when you see, especially with a multifamily development, they really want some consistency between the structures, some cohesive design. So I think most of them that come in are not compliant with this standard, and this does tend to be granted. This one, we do tend to see the multifamily buildings to be compliant with, but it's not in this case, at least not for all of the facades. The ground floors of all the buildings do meet this requirement, and this is that the facades have a projection of at least 5 feet once every 50 feet along the length of that facade. So some of the side elevations do not comply with this, and I'll show you the sort of the measurement of that here, where this is an end of one of the buildings, and you'll see that it's more than 50 feet long, and that sort of projection is less than 5 feet. I didn't have a way to exactly measure it, but it's probably around 2 feet instead of the 5. So that's what this standard is calling for, that there should be more of a jut out than what you're seeing on this facade. Another request for a deviation is in the dimensions of the balconies on the upper floors, which the standard calls for them to be no smaller than 10 feet by 6 feet. They're all more than 10 feet long, but they are all less than 6 feet in depth. So if we were just to do a square footage measurement, they would be large enough. So it comes down to sort of interpretation. Is the square footage sufficient? If that's what the intent of this standard is, or the fact that they're less than 6 feet deep, is that something that you would rather see the plan amended to meet this standard? This one we've talked about quite a bit. No more than 4 dwelling units shall share a common entrance. And I'm going to admit to being entirely baffled by what this means, why it's here, what is it intended to do. We don't even define entrance. Most of us can think of what we believe an entrance to be, but truthfully, if it's a way to enter the building, all of those are only on the ground floor anyway. So you're never going to get compliance on the upper floors with these. Curiously, this is another case where if you just sort of do an average, this would work. But if it's strictly interpreted as no more than 4 dwelling units shall have a common entrance, and I've got to look at the front doors of each of the dwelling units on the upper floors, they're not going to meet this standard. We do often see this deviation request granted. This one, I think this is just a continuation of the earlier one, but giving you something to sort of grab onto with this. If this is, if we're looking at the intent of this being safety, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't, then I wanted to look at how wide are these common entrances into the building. If we're looking at safe egress during an emergency, they're 9.5 to 10.5 feet wide. And I also asked the designer to help me with a measurement of what's the greatest distance from any unit door on any floor to either an exit or a stairwell, and the greatest distance is about 36 feet. This one is another standard that I think we often do see compliance with, and we don't in this case. The standard being that you should avoid aligning doors to separate dwelling units with each other across a hallway, basically. It doesn't say you may not. It says you should avoid aligning them. And we do have some very direct alignments here, as well as some, just minor offsets in some other cases.
Is there a reason for that?
So that one.
What's the purpose of that?
Well, I guess if I open my door and the guy across the hall is running through his apartment, not fully clothed, I'm going to be able to see more than I want to see because his door is right across from me. There's an example.
Okay.
But, I'm only guessing because I wasn't around when these standards were written.
I feel like if you knock on a door and your door's across the hall, it's also going to sound like someone's always knocking at your door.
That's probably true.
Right.
Hadn't thought about that, especially in an upper floor hallway where there's, more
Yeah, a little echo. back and
places
forth.
for the sound to bounce.
Yes, it also gives a little bit of diversity so that it won't have that institutional kind of
Lined up.
yeah.
I think all those make perfect sense, and those may have been what they were thinking when this was written. This one we see quite often. As a matter of fact, I can't recall having a multifamily building actually be compliant with this standard in my time here so far. They did create a spreadsheet to show us, where they stand on this, but in essence, they are including some stone, which brings the masonry percentage up, but the standard is brick, not just masonry. So all the apartment buildings have 40% or more brick on each of their facades. And at this very last bullet point was the applicant describing a justification for why it's designed this way. And while it's not verbatim from other justifications we've seen before, it's very close. What we tend to see is that it has more of an institutional look if it's all brick. And in this case, he states that it feels very heavy and that they were trying to avoid that and create something more diverse and elegant. The awnings, again, Elena's presentation, they have what appeared to be canvas awnings on the building, but I don't know that I've seen that. Most of the modern buildings are looking at other materials, and we see a lot of metal awnings, and just wanted to point that out. For some reason, the UDO specifically states that that they shall be canvas unless otherwise approved by the town council. But of course,
One of those things we're looking at changing, because canvas does not last well in this
I
climate.
heard you mention that before. It's a
It's
maintenance
a maintenance thing.
issue, and of course, you have the discretion to approve any of these deviations. So I don't know why this one was called out for being one that you can approve otherwise. With that being said, and I had a brief conversation with Mr. Jellicourse before we open the meeting here. I was looking at the deviation requests that are ones that we do commonly see the projects comply with, but they don't in this case. And I pulled those three out and am recommending that you consider these being complied with before you grant an approval for this. And again, we've just started doing staff recommendations. I'm not saying, that I'm recommending approval or denial in this case. And I've done recommendations to councils in other positions, and don't get too married to a project where I get my feelings hurt if my recommendation goes nowhere. In this case, these seem like reasonable design standards to be met, because we do often see them met by other projects. And with that being said, if you want to see more of the elevation drawings, I can pull those up in later slides. And
We had a conversation with the applicant. Was there an explanation of being able to do this or not being able, or are the reasons that they weren't?
I think they want to address that with you. I spoke with him before his designer came in the building, so they need to coordinate on that to see what they can do and in what time frame.
So is this brand new knowledge to them about these?
Was.
Okay.
Well, Let me-
New as of-
I had shared with them in an email some, I guess, points of concern, or where I thought that they were not compliant and that they should be aware of. And we did not get revised drawings based on those. That doesn't mean that they're not willing to still modify these through negotiation and coming back to you.
Question on that second one. If I read it right, instead of 6 by 10, it looked like 5 feet 9 inches by 14 feet. So to me, that's okay. Because it's 3 inches, but it's a good bit size. So I guess that one I don't have as much issue with if that's just the way they have to make them. But I don't want it to be 4 feet by, because then that's not really usable. But
The one on the right was smaller. The one on the right, instead of being
One was-
5'9", was like 5'2".
okay,
Yeah.
so, okay.
Wasn't one just 3.5 feet deep?
No, I think 5'2" is the most
Was the
most narrow,
least
and then
deep one?
12 plus some inches, what was the least in the length. So we might consider, and, I know you may not want to set a precedent with this decision, but if the square footage meets the same as a 6 by 10, would you be fine with that, even if it's not 6?
I'd rather request that they meet the 6 by 10 requirement.
Yeah,
Otherwise, we end up with 2 by.
I'd be careful with the square
15.
footage approach to it, only because I don't know that 6 is the right number, but I'm sure the intent is to provide enough depth that you could put some chairs out there or sit comfortably. And if you had a very wide unit where you're only providing 2 or 3 feet, but
Yeah.
a lot of length,
Yeah.
you might
Like
need
my
the square
front
footage,
porch.
but it kind of defeats the purpose too. I don't know what that minimum depth might need to be. I don't know that 6 is absolutely the right number, but I think there's a reason for having some depth.
Agree with you, Taylor. Let's hold to that one too.
And Pam, I like the recommendation, the first one as well, to comply with the difference of 5 feet every 50 feet. If you would like to communicate with the applicant to address those things next week or attempt to.
Absolutely, absolutely. And they're here, and they can, we did talk about this before we met, before the meeting began, and I think that they might be prepared to respond to that.
Okay.
If you have no more questions for me.
Good job, thank you.
Thank you.
Now the applicant.
Thank you, especially for your recommendation. I appreciate
Well,
getting that
I'm
feedback.
happy to do that. I hope they prove to be helpful.
Thank you for doing the extra digging.
That's right.
And you've only been here for 7.5 months.
Does it seem like longer to you?
No, I just left it out there. You can read that any way you want to, Pam. Your professionalism exceeded your.
We stay busy enough that the time does fly.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that. Okay. And if you would state your names too, please.
Absolutely. These up here so that you guys can take a look at some of these materials. My name's Daniel Jellicourse,
My name's Darcy Chamberlain with J. Davis Architects.
and really appreciate the time, and thank you, Pam, for all the work that you did on putting this together. We wanted to just come here and show you some of our 3D renderings because we think that probably provides, to your point earlier, a little bit better visual representation of it. And so if you wouldn't mind pulling that up. Is it the combined?
Yeah, that has multiple sheets.
There we go. Yes.
The clicker there should work for you.
Okay.
Most to the right, that's the,
Do you want to take them through that?
Yeah. So this is a 3D rendering of one of the, I guess, more used buildings, building type 3, and this viewpoint is from Morganton Park North, so the right of way. So we did this to show the colors and materials, and then also if we had mechanical units on the ground, they would be screened with all of the landscaping.
Can you speak up a little bit more because this is being recorded?
There you go.
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
So this is from Morganton Park North, from Morganton Road, the view. The landscaping will show any screening of the mechanical units, and then this kind of more accurately shows the materials that are being used.
Yeah, and I think there was a comment earlier around the brick requirement. We weren't sure exactly which ones were going to be the ones that were sticking points when we came here, but we wanted to bring these to show kind of the differences in the materials, but also to point out like the institutional feel of just all brick. I think the idea was to break it up a little bit and make it feel a little bit more residential. Yeah.
I do really appreciate the variations, even, I mean, the fact that you have brick and stonework, and then the variations in color of the other materials looks really nice. Thank you for that, and thank you for the chart. I really appreciate that you went through the time of actually, thank you.
You're welcome.
Here, so.
How do I change the, just,
Is it working or not? I don't know why this one doesn't seem to be working.
oh, there we go. So this is the same building, and this is a view from the parking lot side. So showing the main entrance, kind of a little over to the right, with the metal awning, and then kind of similar to the other side.
And so I guess the three items that you guys pointed out, the porch dimensions, and really it was that 6-foot dimension that you're looking for us to meet, and then the alignment of the doors, was that the other one? And then the third was, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. What was the third? The variation, right?
Yeah.
So, Darcy, do you have the elevations that we could pull up to show that side?
Not on this.
No, you don't? Okay.
But our design currently has a straight run stair on the first to second floor and then switch back, kind of for more efficiency of the building. We could just have two straight run stairs, so then that bump out could extend all the way to all 3 floors.
Yeah, so that it would extend through the length of it. And I think what we'd like to be able to do is go back and study these changes and maybe come up with some solutions
Yeah,
that
that's
would
the reason I
work.
said, how much notice did you kind of
Yeah.
have, so that you can come back with us and have the
Right.
3 questions answered.
Is there a minimum dimension on those porches that, it sounds like if it's 6 feet, then that's 6 feet, but is there a minimum, because we're, I think, 12,
6 by 10.
okay,
So you're good on the 10,
all right,
not good on the 6.
gotcha, okay.
Yeah, we don't have anything, from the inside of the railing, nothing is shorter than 5 feet clear.
Those are the 3 points, if you can go back to the drawing board, no pun intended, and come back with that.
Okay,
Okay.
and then that would be, we would need to submit that to Pam before the meeting on Tuesday? Okay,
I would think so,
okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
yes.
All right, are there any other questions for us?
It does look very nice, yeah, and I do like the variations of the textures and the materials, it looks good.
Is this particular view from Bruce Wood?
This is from the parking area. So in this case, if this was Morganton Road, Brucewood would be to your, left there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Appreciate your coming, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, let's see, where are we? We already talked about sprucing up Southern Pines. That's just a kind of an FYI that they're coming, that they'll be here.
Didn't have anything you wanted to present on that this evening, did you, Jessica?
Did you have a lot of applications, I hope?
Sorry?
Did you have a lot of applications? Or submittals?
They are highlighting 3 properties.
Okay, very good. Sometimes, I remember it was hard sometimes to even have any. And now we're looking at the consent agenda that we will be reviewing. This is the capital project funding requests. We are still down to 4.
Yeah, and before I turn this over to Jessica, the purpose in having these in front of you this evening is each one of these was discussed at the last meeting. There was some additional information being sought on each of them. The only one that seemed to have been sort of given a go-ahead to move forward was it's on here, it's called the New Hampshire Avenue projects, but that was the Appearance Commission item, and that's the one that is, of all the 4, kind of time-sensitive. But there was some question around the tree closest to the ice cream parlor, so I think Jessica's bringing back some pictures and information on that. Purpose this evening is simply to let staff know any of these that you wish to move forward with for purposes of a budget amendment next week. If that's unanimous, we'll move those budget amendments onto a consent agenda. If it looks like it might be 3-2 or 4-1, or there's any question around whether you wish to do it, we'll simply put them onto action items on the agenda and vote on them in a separate manner. But did want to give Jessica an opportunity to at least bring back information based upon the questions that were asked at the work session. And with that, I'll turn it over.
Yes, I'll go ahead and start with the New Hampshire project, since that was the one that Reagan led in with. We did have a few specific questions about some of the trees, particularly the one at the ice cream parlor. And I looked at those trees, and Jeff Gray did as well. And honestly, all of those trees are in very poor condition. They're hazardous, they're a liability. We have to take them down one way or the other. And almost all of the expense here for that project is simply removing the trees, grinding the stumps, redoing the brickwork. It's actually very minimal cost to even plant new trees. It's about $67.50 is actually the cost of purchasing and planting new trees. So we're asking for the full $62,000 so that we can replace the trees there.
What's your breakout on expenses on that, as far as taking the tree down? Is it the same company, I'm assuming, to take the tree down and to also take the stump out?
I can't remember off the top of my head. That was a quote that Public Works got. I believe it is, but it's not done in the same day necessarily. They'll take the trees down, they'll come back and grind the stumps, but.
Right. So the $60,000 plus is for taking down and grinding a stump, or grinding
And doing the
multiple stumps?
brickwork,
And doing the brickwork.
purchasing new trees, planting new trees. Yes, that's the project. And that includes both the New Hampshire and then also the parking lot there that's kind of behind the Sunrise. So it's actually, it's a fairly substantial landscaping project that they're doing.
Or east side of New Hampshire, East New Hampshire.
Yes,
East side of Project.
right now I'm just talking right about near Sopies and that parking lot.
I wanted to ask, what determines who owns and takes care of the property that's between the sidewalks and the roads for downtown? Because I know that some of it's taken care of by the businesses and some is taken care of by us. Are there lines, or is there some way for us to see, or for the businesses to know? I think it was my phone. It was sitting too close.
Yeah, anything that's in right-of-way, the town or DOT, whoever's right-of-way it is responsible for. So all of these projects that we're bringing to you are town right-of-way, and so we're responsible for the costs. And then, anything that the businesses, have responsibility for, they pay for. You do see like street furniture, and stuff like that they put in the right of ways, but that's not anything that we maintain. We give them permission to do that.
For that.
I guess my concern was that there are some brake pavers on East New Hampshire that were put in by the businesses, and the businesses were told those trees at some point were going to be replaced, and that any brickwork repair afterwards would be the business's responsibility. So I don't know if that's because the businesses put the brickwork in, but then we're willing to put brickwork in front of O'Donnell's. So I don't know
And
what.
specifically, the reason for the O'Donnell situation is specifically because the town sort of created what is there now.
Okay.
You may recall at one time, of course, O'Donnell's was originally a fire station. And there was actually, it was the driveway that led to what used to be the base for the fire station. The town had gone in, and there was a time that people would actually pull in there and park, which was problematic because it blocked the sidewalk, because
Yeah.
they were in what used to be a driveway, but it was also parking on a sidewalk, essentially. The town had gone in and replaced that and made the sidewalk continuous and put the curb in. The problem has been that we've never been able to establish any sort of grass or anything there in the front, and there's multiple reasons for that.
I was like, there's also a ton of gravel. So like
And there's
grass is not going to grow there because somebody's dumping rocks on it.
Exactly. And beyond that, it's a pretty commonplace when they do go out and basically weed eat, because we've never had grass. There's a lot of cigarette butts. There's just a lot of standing and lingering that takes place because of the nature of the area there. So yes, it would be a scenario where we've gone in and done that, but it's really because it is a constant maintenance headache. Not only the most adjacent business owner, but others on the block will call if the weeds start to get higher, and we're never going to be able to establish grass. So it's almost a completion of the project that the town started when they got rid of the problematic parking situation that was there in the first place.
Okay. So, but as of now, we're not taking trees down on that east side of New
All of
Hampshire.
the trees that we're talking about are on West New Hampshire near Soap Pies and the ice cream parlor.
And of course, there were some trees that were already taken down previously due to disease and problem there.
It was one
It's-
specific business owner, when I asked, said that he had staved off the taking down of the tree for a year now, but he felt like it was coming up soon. So I just want to make sure that that was not also happening. Because he was concerned about the brickwork that he apparently was going to have to fix.
And I think I'm familiar with some of those projects you're talking about. And in those cases, those business owners wanted to expand the brickwork and have some seating and things like that. And they did it so it matches everything. But, you know, they did it with the understanding that they would be responsible for maintaining that, because that was not a town facility, town project.
Okay.
So
Trees should just never be planted in downtown. But I'm glad they are. But this is not their natural, this is not where this is not where they can thrive after a point.
And to that point, there was a question about the age of these trees. Jeff Gray estimated them around 85 to
They last a
maybe
long time.
95 years. So they've been there a long time. But, you know, this is a great reminder that an urban downtown environment is not the best for trees, but it doesn't mean that they can't
Right.
thrive. But, you know, we do have to
And people hit them.
take extra care of them.
The presentation we heard 2 weeks ago, wasn't it that downtown trees, their lifespan is something like 10 years?
It really depends on tree selection and location and yeah. I mean, these have probably honestly been there a lot longer than they should have been.
Yeah.
I would doubt we're going to get 85 to 90 years out of the next tree. If you can get 20, 25 years, you're probably doing good. So.
I like big trees downtown. I think it's a shame to cut them all down and replace them with something that doesn't grow. So if we can get more than 10 years, it makes more sense money-wise, and the trees are prettier.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, you know.
And then
a
people can't see in my
goal, but-
house. It works out really well.
If you really pay attention to these, you'll see what bad shape they're in. So it's definitely time for them to go.
I walked with David, our mayor, walked for like 4 hours with Adam Lindsay and Pete, and the four of us walked, and we walked for about 4 hours. And it gets cold at night when the sun goes down. It was chilly, but we looked at every single tree from West Southern Pines all around, and our trees have a real beating. I mean,
They do.
They really do. People like to hit them with their cars for some crazy reason. So I was amazed how many that many years ago we had a lot of trees that were on the struggle bus, which we have replaced several because they just they're
And the trucks, I mean, you can see right here, these are all getting
I was
hit
going
by
to say,
trucks.
if these are as old as Gray as Jeff Gray has estimated, yeah, as old as Jeff Gray has estimated, clearly the types of vehicles that were in the downtown that many decades ago were a little bit different than.
kinder.
Yeah.
Kinder when they got hit. Yeah.
The new brickwork, there is going to be a new well made for new trees, is
Yeah,
that correct?
that's my understanding is that the new trees are not going exactly where these old ones. They'll be in slightly different locations, and so the wells will have to be opened up. And
So we're tearing out sidewalk, and we're building a new well.
so we have, this middle picture shows it pretty well. You can see the concrete sidewalk is on the left, and that's right up against the building. And then we have brick that's all along the curb and in between the concrete sidewalk. So the trees will go in the brick area. And so we will be taking the brick out and putting the trees in there. So we won't be digging up concrete sidewalk.
To basically move the bricks down to where these wells.
Back where they can, and there's probably, going to have to be some new ones that are purchased because these are pretty big areas that we'll have to put bricks
Yeah,
back in.
the only place you may lose a little bit of sidewalk would be immediately adjacent to where one is coming out, potentially, just because of the root structures and what has occurred with them over time. But they should not have to take concrete sidewalk out with any of the new plantings.
No, you won't see any decrease in the width of the sidewalk or the walkway or anything.
That brick in the second picture is closer to Broad Street, correct?
That right there is the tree in front of SoPi's, or I'm sorry, the
SoPi's.
ice cream parlor.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And so, yeah, that's kind of right there at the
I know those
corner.
routes. My children played on those routes, yeah. And so you're going to move the new tree closer to the corner,
I don't,
which may
I'm not sure
create
that
some
it's
sort of
necessarily
visibility
going
issue?
closer to the corner. Those are decisions, I mean, they may even be made in the field, just
Do we
depending on.
have a drawing of a rendering of what we're going to do to replace? Or is this just a?
Yes, yes.
And that's not in the packet?
No, Jeff Gray has been working with the landscapers. I don't know that they've necessarily done a drawing per se.
We may
'cause
not have a drawing. We don't really have a plan.
We have a plan, yes. We have a
What's the-
total number of plant materials that we have gotten quotes from. We have gotten quotes on square footages of the brick. This isn't necessarily something that you do a detailed plan on. You're doing more measurements. It took about 3 or 4 different contractors to get quotes from. So you're not necessarily going to see a landscape architect's drawing, but this is more decisions that are made in the field, honestly. So, but we do have all of the quotes.
So we're not going to have a landscape architect looking at it and determining what would make sense and would be safe and would provide, hopefully, trees and shade for
Well,
my children's children.
Jeff Gray is a certified arborist. I am a former certified arborist. I did not keep my certification just due to continuing education. I'm also a landscape architect by education, as is Pam. So I think among our staff, we're pretty good at this.
And I think we have at least one on the Appearance Commission.
Yeah, we actually we
that
have
were
more than
involved
one.
with this
Yes, we
project.
have.
Yeah.
We have
There's
registered
no
landscape.
drawing, though. I mean, we're surrounded by talent, but there's no drawing. Is that right?
It's not really necessary for this type of project. So it would just be, added time that, the next tree is probably going, 2 or 3 feet down from this one. So we have a count, we have materials, we have square footages. It's not really necessary to do a drawing for this type of project.
Moving forward with this project.
I'm okay with this one.
But to Ann's point, if we're pulling out 2 giant trees, maybe it makes sense to put in 3 smaller trees. I mean, to see it would make sense in some ways, even if it's a very rough sketch, just to know, I don't know, what we're getting into, if that makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I understand. And, in order to get the most shade, you're wanting to go with bigger, like overstory trees. But because you're going with the overstory trees, you don't want to plant them too close
Okay,
together.
so we are going
'cause
with
then all
bigger
the-
trees again. It's
Oh,
not
yeah,
gonna be as
yeah. I
nice.
mean,
Okay.
it's not going to be the same species, but they are going to be overstory, nice shade trees. Yes. So that is the plan.
Okay.
And Jeff has been working on that tree selection. He's been working with the Appearance Commission. So I think you'll be very happy with the plan.
Sounds like we're in good hands with all the education about landscape architect and arborist.
We have people who know a lot about trees in this
Oh,
town.
yes, and the Appearance Commission has
With
a
our
tree committee.
volunteers and our staff.
Final word, I would not build a house without drawings.
I
Frustrates
would
me that there's
agree
not a
that.
rendering, I know, but it frustrates me there's not a rendering of a significant change to downtown. That frustrates me. And so the additional information that's come back to me is a picture of the roots, and I understand the problem, and I understand the trees have been abused by delivery trucks and probably my children.
And life.
But
They're old.
But it's frustrating. This is the more information that we've received are these 3 pictures.
The process for when Pennsylvania was done?
Yes, it's exact. Yeah, I mean, this is the same process that we're not doing anything differently or less than what we've done for many of these streetscape projects. You know, this is a volunteer-led initiative. You know, in my professional opinion, it's unneeded resources and expense to have a registered landscape architect do a drawing. This is a perfect type of planting where decisions can be made in the field. Everything's already there. The brick is there. We know where everything's going. I would honestly rather put my resources going to the tree farm and selecting good trees.
Right. But when I ask if we're going to put the tree, I'm sorry I interrupted you, but when I ask you, are we going to put the tree there where the brick is, it's closer to Broad Street and may or may not create some sort of a visibility issue for cars.
I don't know the answer
And
to
you don't
that.
know the answer, and that's what concerns me.
No, if you let me
That's the
continue, I
sort
don't
of-
know the answer to that particular tree. That is something that Jeff Gray is working on with the landscaper, who is working with the Appearance Commission. I'm sure that
so
decision's
cool
already
if
been
we knew
made.
what they thought.
Clearly, in doing that in the field is it will not go closer if in fact it becomes either a site distance issue or in any way would conflict with the ADA access ramp to the sidewalks. But as far as sitting here this evening and saying it's going to go closer or not, I don't think either one of us could say, other than it won't if it creates either one of those issues.
Well, I just think y'all will do the right thing and you do the best thing, and that's
Yeah, and
what you'll do.
in some instances, the specificity of renderings can limit the flexibility of what can actually happen. I just had some dental work done today, but I trusted them to do what they needed to do without really,
There's a lot going on in these downtown environments. There's stuff underneath the sidewalks.
Right.
There's drains. There's, this is honestly the type of project where you make those decisions in the field. It's far better to be making decisions on a field than on a piece of paper behind a computer.
just to quit beating a dead tree. No pun. Are we good with moving forward with this project?
Yeah.
Money that's being used to do this project. There was money that was already, I guess, set aside for tree projects. They postponed it a year, so there's sort of some earmarked money to do it.
So
quite
it's
a
that they
jump.
didn't spend it last year. Now it's not sitting in the appropriation line item. It's sitting in your fund balance,
Yeah.
essentially.
Okay.
I guess would be one way to look at it.
Yeah.
But that was 10,
but that
not
would really just be-
62. Yeah.
I mean, I guess all of this is fund balance.
So what do we tell, because we got to start planting because it's fall, time to plant.
So I think I'm hearing support for the tree replacement and planting project, and I think I'm hearing general consensus on the East New Hampshire, the brick, for a total of 77,713.
If it is not certain that it is unanimous, I'm just going to suggest that we put it on as an action item next week as opposed to putting on the consent agenda.
Is it not
Just offer
unanimous?
that.
It's not unanimous.
Okay.
I don't know, cut you off.
Don't like the brickwork. and I want to know where the money's coming from because I want to make sure ARPA money we're actually doing something that's substantial and makes a difference. That's all I want to say.
Again, if you do not consider a downtown project like this to be revenue replacement money at this point, we can just call it fund balance, and I will not add it to the eventual spreadsheet that will be created for.
That would make me happy. Yeah. I'm good with the trees.
Okay, so
I guess we're jumping back up to the memorial.
yeah, go through my memo. The one additional thing that has been updated, that has changed since our last presentation, Cindy King has had conversations with the Optimist Club, and they are in support and request funding for this project. They have prepared a letter of support, and they are also offering to contribute 10% of this project cost, $8,000 in February 2023 and $8,000 in February 2024. So that letter has been added to your packet.
Okay. How are we with lighting project?
I read 18,000 total, but they're contributing, that's right, 16. Yeah, that's
8
right,
and
because it was
8.
10%, okay.
Basically.
Yeah, we would still have to allocate in your budget amendment, the 160.
We have revenue coming in over the next 2 years to offset.
And it would just go into that 8, or that 16,000 just goes into the fund balance?
Replenish that.
Okay.
And also in their letter, they noted how lighting this field would help to increase the number of participants. They estimate that they could serve approximately 600 kids on that field with lighting, because it would open it up for additional days and hours. And then they also highlighted some other projects that they have undertaken with their funding and their resources. Some of their current ones are the scoreboard, and they're doing a batting cage. So they do other things on their own that they don't ever come to us and ask for money, but they were willing to contribute for this one.
Do we want this on the consent agenda, or do we want to? This one?
I'm good with this one.
I am too. Taylor?
Pickleball courts lit? Yeah, I'm good with it.
And keep that one on the consent.
Tennis courts, did you?
I said pickleball, but yes. I was whispering, you can't whisper into a microphone, it didn't work well. Okay, yeah, good for lights.
So we're all good with that one, so that can be on the consent. Campbell House fencing.
Less of, is that one you want included on your revenue replacement spreadsheet or no?
Is someone looking at me?
We can make that decision later, but.
I'd like to make it later. I feel like, yeah, I think we make that later. Call it fund balance right now.
Balance.
I don't want to make that decision for the council though, so
Okay, well,
feel free to argue with me or
let's
disagree.
Let's do fund balance.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll just keep it that way. So Campbell House fencing.
Yes, so hopefully I have what you will consider a favorable update on this project. When we spoke about this a couple weeks ago, a couple of the questions that we asked you, clearly there is fencing on almost all 4 sides of Campbell House right now. It's 50 to 60 years old. It's, deteriorating. From a Parks and Recreation standpoint, we don't need all of that fencing, and you expressed support for removing what was unnecessary. So, and you also asked that we take another look at the basketball court and just add whatever fencing would be minimally necessary there for safety and avoiding vehicle conflicts and that type of thing. So based on that direction, staff met with a fencing contractor last week or the week before, and we measured out the exact areas of where we would need minimally necessary fencing, and then got some quotes, and we were able to bring that number down. I think it was $58,000 that were talking about last session to now $30,000. And this would include, like this fencing that you're seeing right now on East Connecticut, that will all come down, that will not be replaced. There's fencing in those interior drives as you go in there. That will be replaced because we have a lot of vehicle conflicts there. And we got a quote on the basketball court just on the end where it's closest to the parking lot to keep the ball from going in the parking lot. And then we will be replacing the fencing that's at the parking lot, and then there's some off of Weymouth Road. So we are just putting back whatever is minimal to keep vehicles off of our fields and out of our tree areas and that type of thing.
Now it's 30.
Is our estimate, and that includes the demolition and removal of all of the wooden fencing, and then we'll be installing new fencing. It'll have wooden posts, but we're doing, it's like a metal chain, and around the house it's going to have some black balls that's kind of decorative, but kind of matches the character of the house. As you're out further into the park, it won't have those balls. It'll just be the wooden posts and the chain, so it'll be much easier to maintain.
It's the
much
same
longer
fencing
lasting.
that the pictures were in the packet from the work session, right?
Yes, and then the, I believe it's vinyl coated chain link at the basketball court, so.
Removal, like along Connecticut, just because it's fallen down, and if you remove it, you don't have to worry about, because it doesn't look bad. I don't want to replace it
see
with
right
new
there.
ones, but.
It actually does
so
look pretty
that-
bad.
Okay, the one thing you sent looked pretty, okay, had like
Yeah.
ivy growing on it, looked kind of nice, but.
It's in bad shape, and
So
because,
it just prevents future fall downs and have to clean it up. And
yeah, and I mean, when we met with our park maintenance crew, they said it's barely a day that goes by at Campbell House that they're not doing something with this
there
fencing,
you go.
so
Okay.
it takes a lot of resources. So, yeah, they said, oh, can we take it down today? We said, hang on.
I appreciate y'all working on this to try to get it down and paring it down to what needs to be done and saving us, what, $26,000? I think that's admirable, and so I'm for putting this on the consent agenda personally.
And also, just for clarity, the basketball court resurfacing is not included in that. So this is just fencing.
So can you back up one, is that the, the one with the black fence right there?
That is what we're looking.
That's what you're talking about doing on the.
Yeah, so that'll be what's around kind of that drive circle right near the house with the balls.
That's
And then,
consistent, good.
and then further out, we won't have those balls just because it's
Right.
lesser money.
Just complement the house. I mean, it
That's what we
looks-
felt.
Further out, so the place that the chain fence without the balls would be where, sorry?
Like out along Weymouth, we have some areas where the tree coverage is not thick enough that we've had trouble with cars driving in there, so
I
we
gotcha.
would put
Okay.
fencing there.
Not necessarily the entire perimeter of.
No,
Okay.
no, there would be nothing on Connecticut. And then the other place that would be is at that parking lot. If you enter off of Connecticut, we would put fencing back up there because we don't want vehicles driving on there and, separation from kids playing in the parking lot. So that's our main goal is safety, honestly.
Right, I agree.
I understand the after-school program has actually left that park.
They are at the rec center
Is that a
now.
permanent change, or is that something that's temporary? I just noticed it's still on here as after-school program 10 months out of the year.
I would have to ask Cindy about that. I'm not sure if they intend to go back to the train house or not. I know they use the train house in the summer for summer camps, and they split up the different age groups depending on, some go to the rec center, some go to the train house. So, but I can ask that question.
Yeah, I think it's bigger facility. That's what I understood. Okay.
And also the access is a little easier at the rec center.
Okay.
So are we good with 30 and putting it on the consent agenda?
for all of this, can we just do the whole fund balance ARPA later for all of them? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Kind of thought that's what we were doing, so sorry.
Okay, and then the last project is Pool Park. And when we spoke at the last session, I think there was general consensus that an agreement on replacing the storage shed roof for $10,000. And then we had presented the pool deck repairs. We had a quote for $124,460 for that, and those are the concrete pavers. There were a few questions that we were asked to follow up on. One from Bill was about the material costs of those pavers, and those are just under $22,000. So a lot of that is labor. We also confirmed that the pavers do work with the dome. And then the other question that we were asked in terms of the quote itself to pursue was, what would the cost be if we did the pool interior, the lining, the material in there at the same time that we also did the exterior deck? And so we got a quote for that. It was $106,859. So if you did all three of those projects together, which is the roof, the paver surface, and the pool interior, it's $241,319. If you only did the pool deck and the roof, it's $134,460. And then there was also some questions about what are the year-round activities that occur at the pool. So we did reach out and just confirm our understanding with the Sand Sharks, and they do offer swimming lessons 12 months of the year. Those include group lessons, private lessons, and those are 6 months and up, including adults. And then they have their year-round swimming program team as well as their summer swim team, and those are for ages 5 to 18. And then, of course, our general usage in the summer.
Can we ask that Cindy add that to our Arts and Rec website? And like along with a link to Sand Sharks or something like that?
Yes.
Do we know prices on those programs? And like if they're accessible to
I
everyone?
believe they do have pricing on their website. I was looking at that. Yeah, they have a lot of good detailed contact information.
So apparently the Sand Sharks have refurbished the interior of the pool within the last year. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
I mean, I talked to him about it because, I didn't want to spend this extra $100,000. I was told that they drained the whole thing last year, repainted all of it after. I think there was some concern with paint around the drain at the last inspection, and then that led to them draining it completely and completely repainting it just last year.
Yeah, and that is, and unfortunately, it's a temporary, short-term solution. It was something that came up during the inspection. The inspector noted that the pool, she had asked for some work to be done, and so they did that. So
You said temporary, define temporary. Is this just a stopgap until next summer, or is this like a couple of years?
I don't know what the lifespan would be on that paint. I mean, we do know that, it's breaking down constantly. The paint itself, even with the new paint, it's problematic for us to scrub because the materials that you would scrub a pool with for sanitation don't mix well with the paint. So the paint's constantly chipping off. So I don't know in terms of lifespan, but that was something that they did for permit compliance. So one of the reasons that we, honestly brought the pool interior to you was not necessarily to ask your approval for funding today in November of 2022. The main reason that we wanted to highlight that for you is because I think there's always been this assumption that the pool was just this major catastrophe waiting to happen, that one day everything was just going to blow up. And therefore any expense that we did, these pavers, this roof, would just be money that's completely lost. And so the more that we really dug into this and talked to experts, and we got confirmation that we really have two just kind of maintenance needs, and it's the pavers, and then it is, at some point I would not recommend that we paint the pool again. At some point we just need to install the new liner. And so we wanted to share that with you because that's $106,000. It's not multiple hundreds of thousands or millions. And so we wanted to share that we thought that that was promising for the longevity of the pool. We do also believe that regardless of what happens with the Y, our pool has a very long, we think that they can coexist very well together and they will have different uses. So we're not necessarily asking for you to give us that $106,000 today. In terms of logistics, it does make sense because the sand sharks will be down for a while. So if we can knock out everything and get that taken care of, great. But I don't think it has to be done for next summer or anything like that. That could be deferred.
When I ask questions about it, I mean, I definitely want to, I mean, if we don't do it, keep it on the, on the forefront. Don't forget about it.
Right.
Because I definitely foresee, over the next several years, if things transpire as we hope they will and anticipate they will, where both pools, potentially if there's one at the Y, not the Y, but both pools are used, necessary, and it's full go, then absolutely open to paying for it. It's just a lot, I mean, $100,000.
Yeah.
It sounds cheap in the numbers we're talking about, but it's still a lot of money.
No, I mean, honestly, like I said, if you asked me to prioritize, I would not do that. I just more wanted to let you know that it's $100,000 fix, not $1 million fix. And we think that's good news because we think people are always going to be interested in having an outdoor pool. Because even with the Y, that's an indoor pool. People love the experience of having an outdoor pool. So we were pleased that we have some relatively inexpensive improvements that could be done to keep us.
I mean, as
going.
detailed as we've, this list was much bigger. I feel like we're being good stewards of funds. And so I'd bet that there's still going to be 100,000 in the ARPA kitty over the next little while as we see what happens with the pool, to where the 100,000 is not going to be gone if we do need to do it. But I mean,
Is it going to be more cost effective to do everything at the same time?
There's probably a minimal savings, in terms of mobilization. But I think you could also argue that with the Sharks I think they spent roughly $7,000 to $8,000 last year to paint. I think that's worth something to them. So,
What's the rental agreement with the Sand Sharks?
it is a 3-year agreement that we renewed, I believe it was last May. So it has about a year and a half left in it.
And the cost of them is just maintenance of the facility?
So they do not pay any rent to us. During the summer months, we split all of the costs for pool chemicals and utilities and that type of thing. In the off-season months, they pay 100% of all of that. They also split the costs with us for any type of kind of more routine maintenance, like the filters, the pumps. We go 50-50 on that.
Yeah, I think at the point that we address resurfacing the interior of the pool, if it is getting that much use and we're continuing using it, at the point that it needs to be repainted, they may be willing to throw some money in.
Yeah,
to
and I
that
think it's the
project.
type of thing that honestly, knowing that this is a more expensive project and it would give our pool significant longevity. If they want to have a continued relationship with us, perhaps if we gave them enough notice, they could do some fundraising of their own and maybe make a bigger contribution.
Do we have any estimate on building renovation cost?
Yes, we did actually have a contractor come out and look at that.
As I'll ask. I mean, I know we're not doing it now, but I'd like to know. for the
Yes,
future.
yeah, I know, and actually we were going to bring that information to you more for budget, but just very briefly, we had a contractor come out. The recommendation was to demolish the bathhouse and build from the ground up, partly just because, I mean, it's 60-plus years old. It's not ADA accessible. But with that in mind, wouldn't necessarily plan to increase the footprint. We think the size works. So we were given a per square footage number of approximately $200 per square foot to rebuild. Cindy actually roughly measured it today on GIS, and we think it's about 1,200 square feet. So roughly, you're probably talking, 250-ish. By the time you add in design and things like that, literally just us on a phone call today, we kind of thought, $350 might be a rough starting point. We would certainly refine that before we came back to you. But, and that's kind of consistent with some other information that we have gotten from other towns that are renovating pools in the area. We know that was it Sanford, Apex? Siler City, thank you. We knew that they had done a bathhouse project and it was still in that 350 range. So, I think that's a good starting point for conversation purposes
I
today in
appreciate that you
November.
looked into that. Thank
Yeah. And that would be the next project.
I don't want
that- That would be the next project we would recommend.
That's
So,
right.
Taylor Bathhouse, that doesn't have a very good ring to it, does it? That doesn't sound quite correct.
Thank you for the extra effort into projecting costs
Made her
there.
blush, look at that.
I'm definitely. The paver
Yeah,
project
a
seems
thumbs up
is
on the
great.
pavers.
I like that. Which of those roofs? Show me the 10,000. Is it that black
It's
one, the
that
bottom left?
down on the bottom
Okay.
left. You can
All
even
right.
see the fascia board that's all rotting.
That's the $10,000 roof?
Yes,
Project.
yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah, yeah, it's internal rot and things like that. Oh, don't zoom in.
Looks better from afar. Zoom out
But
some more.
Doesn't that water look nice? Let's focus on that.
Yeah, that's, holy smokes, yeah, that's,
And what about the fencing around the pool? Talk to me about, do you feel like that's still in good shape?
We do, yeah, for now. I mean, if we were to do a bigger project, we would probably look at maybe doing something there. That is the type of thing that is inspected by by the county, and it passes inspection. So yeah, I think it's fine for now.
Is there any reason to believe that the current paint job would get in the way of passing inspection next year if we went ahead and put the pavers down? Would there be a problem with the current paint job and not having the liner?
Not based on the information that we have gotten from the inspector.
I know there have been issues with people, with them worrying about the space under the fence, with them worrying about the cracks in the deck, which we're addressing. But you don't anticipate an issue right now if we just ride with the Sand Sharks paint job and put down the pavers?
So they did that for this past summer season, and it passed inspection
Okay.
with that paint job. And I'm not a pool expert, but I do not believe that that was like a one-year lifespan project. It should have more years than that.
$1,000, you should hope. it lasts.
You know, that the inspector specifically wrote that on our 2021 permit, and so that was why they did that, and
Okay.
it did not come up again this year. The deck came up again, but
So we're looking at 106,859 for pavers.
no, we are looking at 124,460
Plus the 10.
plus the 10,000 for the roof, so a total of
460.
134,460.
Okay.
Just to confirm, Jessica, that includes some of the manifold work and stuff that is going to need to be done
Yes.
anyhow.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
about $7,500, $8,000 worth of work for pump and filter that we have to do regardless,
Yeah.
so.
That brings me to that question, I guess. I didn't know if I needed to ask it. So the pump and filter and all how we sanitize the water for the pool, since the amoeba thing came up, does that sanitize the water for the splash pad as well?
It should be a separate unit because they were built completely separately. They're permitted separately, so I don't believe that they.
At least the splash pad has some sort of sanitation on it. Never mind, I don't need to ask. Yes, it does. Okay.
Yeah, no, we have to go through permitting requirements there too. Yeah, it's scary, isn't it?
Okay, so I'm trying to see I need some consensus. So are we good with 134,460?
I think so, yes.
For the roof and the pavers?
Yes.
And the consent agenda? We're all good with all? Okay,
Yes.
so there we go. Got
You just
that.
move item 4 off the consent agenda. All right.
Everything else is on the consent agenda. Okay,
We
very good.
Thank you for your.
Thank you. Appreciate all
support.
your extra effort. The next one is Resolution 1034 AX 0522. We're just setting a public hearing for .41 acres on South Pine Street. And that's part of the consent agenda. We good with that one? Okay. And then the approval of the minutes. I'm sure y'all have read them. If you have any,
There's a second.
Well, I'll just
annex.
quickly note, there's a second public hearing on a second annexation also, and these are the two that you'll recall
okay.
it at the work session we passed.
Sorry, yeah, I
Please go
just-
look into it,
yeah.
and this is step 2, and then you'll hold a public hearing next month.
I hit the super scroll button. So y'all are good
Good
with
with both of
that one
those.
too? Okay. And then the minutes. Okay.
Oh, and Cindy was watching us.
Oh, good.
Oh,
She
jeez.
texted me back and said that they do not plan to go back to the train house for after school because the rec center is beggars.
Okay.
She's watching, so someone does watch.
Yes,
Have a little
certainly,
staff that
James.
watch.
I'm just kidding.
If, first of all, are the minutes okay? Is there anything you need to let Beth know on those before?
Yes.
We do have one item, and I wasn't able to get an email out to all of you, but James may wish to join us
Oh, why
here.
James is here.
You may recall a couple of work sessions ago, we had some discussion about the Knoll Road project, essentially through Longleaf, relative to the DOT project that got delayed. Price has gone up very significantly. James had said we were working with DOT to see if maybe they would authorize a project within the current STIP, which would involve quite a bit more money on their end, but also on our end. And this is the picture that you may recall he had brought sort of options A, B, and C, and everybody seemed to be leaning towards something along these lines. So James received notice in the last 48 hours that DOT seemed to have some money. They seem to be on board with moving something forward. They want to, of course, take that to the state board meeting tomorrow.
It's a division board.
Division board, okay. But it does mean some commitment on our part. And feel free to jump in from there. And-
Essentially, DOT at the staff level is ready to take the project up through the process, and before they do that, they're coming back to the town asking, is the town still committed? And what that means to the town is essentially about a $560,000 investment.
How much do they pay?
That's our part.
Oh.
So
Well, I mean,
I'll-
how much do they pay?
they will end up paying about 1.3 million.
Okay, wow, they throwing that much?
Yeah, so the way the program works is DOT pays 80% of the construction cost up to the approved budget. And then the town is on the hook for 20% of the construction and 100% of engineering cost, which we currently have, and I think it's a CPF 49, it's the Bike and Pedestrian Fund. We have enough money in there currently that would cover the engineering cost for this project. The upfront engineering cost, there could be some on the back end with construction administration and observation type work. But, you know, if this is something that, you know, this body is still committed to and wants us to press forward, we can pass that along to DOT and engage engineers. But also understanding that $560,000 is not a small amount.
So how much money do we have? That is, you said you mentioned that in that fund you had.
Yeah, so that fund right now has, it's roughly $236,000.
We can't have it all.
Well, it will take the better part of that on the engineering and design and there's an environmental report or environmental clearance type thing that goes with that.
Yeah, these are essentially federal funds that DOT is then administering out to different entities. So there are some federal requirements like getting environmental review documents.
So what you will eventually see, and I say eventually because the design and permitting portion of this, I think you estimated it about a year to 18 months.
Yeah, it's,
So what you will eventually see, and I think a couple of you have seen this, is DOT will send an agreement for council approval about the time that they get ready to go to bid on the project. So again, the design and stuff will be done, the money will be spent on the engineering, assuming their estimate is good and they've aged that to allow for the design time, they'll come back, you'll sign an agreement that says, move forward with this. We hereby commit what right now looks to be about an additional $350,000, $325,000, at which time we'll be looking for budget amendments, et cetera. So right now, no necessity for any sort of budget amendments or anything because there is money in the account where this project was going to move forward in 2019. At the same time, not in a giant hurry to spend close to $250,000 in engineering and design if we're not committed to, barring construction costs again doubling, moving forward with a project. So
I think it'd be pretty cool. It comes closer to connecting a greenway. It'd be pretty great.
That's the
and it'll
goal.
connect in. Yeah, that'd be great. BJ, do you want to say something?
Oh, sorry.
No, I could tell.
Around, we're kind of.
Pinterest address and be able to use this. So, so I do live right at the end, at the north end of this trail, but actually the reason why I do feel compelled to say something here, during the process of working on the CLRP already, one of the things that comes up at every single meeting over and over and over, you ask anyone, why do you love Southern Pines? What do you like about Southern Pines? I'm telling you, top 3 things is going to be recreation amenities, trails, paths. It came up again today. It comes up all the time. And I will say that what comes up is connectivity. We have this network up here that people use like crazy, Reservoir Park. We have the Greenway. It goes all the way up to the Nix Creek, this trailhead up here. And all of this, depending upon a whole bunch of different things, but this is all a network up here. Then you have a network that connects and goes all the way down along the side of Mid-South, heavily used. Yes, we use it, so in that case, I can just vouch for the fact that it is a lot of traffic out there on nice days. And then what's not reflected on this map is we now have path that goes along here, and we are talking about this DFI project here, and we will have our linear park that goes along, formerly known as Pine Ridge Parkway, that will come through here. So I've spoken many times about this DFI project being a hub of multimodal transportation, and this will literally get you from essentially, you will have a way to move without being on a road, getting really all the way from where the current Chick-fil-A is, that ballpark area, Kickback Jacks, all the way up to approaching Carthage. And that connectivity is significantly made by this one project right here out along North Knoll. That project, and I do see a lot of people recreating on the side of North Knoll, from folks that live there that just walk on the side of the road. I've seen people walking on that off Camber Hill, and it's heavily used. That's my pitch.
There in 2 weeks. And that's the reason, that we're doing this, just for me to do that.
Great. Never mind.
This is great. So do what you need to do. Is that?
What did you do to make this happen?
Ask.
Actually.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's
well,
great.
That's really good news.
There's been, as ARPA funds are getting distributed out to many entities, DOT is not alone in that. The infrastructure bills the feds passed, in the last year, all that money is starting to trickle out. So there are available pots of money. DOT can kind of reallocate things. I've heard it from several sources that Aberdeen had maybe not quite as big an increase as this, but they had projects. They've gone back to DOT. DOT has been able to increase those project budgets also. So
Great.
I asked nicely, but
You obviously had your finger on the pulse. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you much.
That's great.
So
I'm excited
do you
to
need anything from us except way to go?
nope, at this point, I think I got everything I need. There'll be plenty of other steps along the process, but there'll be more to come.
Thank you.
So much.
Anything else, Reagan?
that's all I have this evening.
It's a good surprise.
Okay, I need a motion to adjourn.
So I move to adjourn.
Should see my reaction.
Aye.
And I don't know if you want to see, we do have, I do want to see that. We do have those. I want to see what you have. I'd love to show you. They're